Hi, Cazzie. Okay.
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thank you for taking the time out to take part in a podcast. I know you're busy for the things that you're doing, but I think it's best to start off with, as I've been saying so far to people, with a bit of a nice synopsis of what you've done, who you are, and kind of what you're doing now. And then I guess we'll kind of jump into, a lot more depth about your work history and whatever else. Is that all right?
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, great.
So to start, I'm Cazzie Jude. I've got over 20 years leadership experience. I started off a long time ago training at Trent Polytechnic in Nottingham and was completely inspired by the world of education. And from that moment, I've never looked back. I started as an early years teacher. I just loved it working in nursery with an amazing team of teaching assistants who taught me how to teach. After that, I was on the National Numeracy Strategy and also a founding teacher for the Foundation Stage Profile. And then in 2004, I got my first headship in Castle Bromwich at Castle Bromwich Infant and Nursery School, which I absolutely loved every single minute of it. Had the most amazing dynamic team, and we made it into an outstanding school together, which was amazing. After about 6.5 years there, I thought there was life beyond the green railings surrounding the school. And in 2010, I went to work abroad for 14 years, worked on various projects, firstly for a company called SSAT, which you might have heard of. And I worked as Deputy Project Director for there in a place called Alain. And I worked with principals in primary and secondary schools, bringing in performance management and school improvement and managing a team of teachers. After that, I went to Dulwich College in China, and then I came back to the UAE and Qatar. And in Qatar, I had the privilege of working for GEMS Education and setting up their first British school there with a guy called Jonathan Day. And then recently I've trained as a leadership coach because I felt it was now time to give something back to others. And we came back to the UK this summer, and I've been concentrating on coaching leaders in the UK and also internationally. And it's just the most wonderful opportunity to empower others to be the best that they can be.
Wow, that's a lot. Great, fantastic. So if we could just bring it back a little bit, Cazzie, to, I guess, what made you want to become a teacher? Have you always wanted to be a teacher, or was it parents? What made you choose that path?
That's a really interesting question. And I wish I was somebody who could say, actually, I always wanted to be a teacher, or my parents wanted to be a teacher. It was the last thing my parents wanted me to do. One of the reasons I became a teacher was they had a family friend who was a reception class teacher, and she decided that I'd make a good teacher. So one day she took me into school with her, into her reception class one wet, miserable October day when it was pouring with rain. And I just really enjoyed being in the classroom with her and the children. And then I didn't follow it up, went off to Trent Polytechnic, did my degree in textile technology, went and worked for a year, had great designs and wanted to be a fashion buyer, but couldn't just quite break through. And then ended up back in Nottingham working for a computer-aided design company in sales. Realised that sales wasn't quite right for me, didn't really know what to do next. And a friend of a friend suggested that I became a teacher. So one Friday in September, I phoned at Trent Polytechnic and said, I'd like to start on your PGCE course, please, this September. Unfortunately for me, at that moment, the course director was in the office and she said, come for an interview next week. So I spoke to Lorna, who was already a teacher. She told me what I'd be asked in my interview, went along for my interview, and a week and a half later, I started. And ever since then, I've never looked back, and I absolutely loved every single minute of it. I was very fortunate that my flatmate, he had parents who were very supportive. His mum was a school governor. So at weekends, I'd go and stay with them, Christmas, New Year. And I was able to put my books out on their breakfast table and work all weekend. And they looked after me and fed me. And I took 4 months off, went travelling, and then got my first job. And I've just loved every single day of it.
Wow. So you took it through some good advice.
It was good advice. I think it was somebody looking at me and identifying that I'd make a great teacher. And I spoke to her at Christmas and was chatting to her, and I said, well, why did you know? She went, I just knew. I could tell that when you came into school, there was something about you. and you got down to the children's level and you spoke to the children and you looked at them and you said, and you were a natural teacher at 18.
Oh, wow. Do you think it takes a certain type of person to become a teacher? Not anybody can become a teacher, would you say?
I think it does. You can learn to be a teacher, but you can't learn to be a great teacher. It's in your nature and it can't be put inside you, and you've either got it or you haven't. And to be a brilliant teacher, you've just got to love being with the children, but you've also got to want the best for the children and to work your hardest to make sure they have the best chances possible whilst they're in your care. They only have you for a year, but you can turn around their lives and change their lives in that year, and you can be an inspiration to them. And you never forget a good teacher. You forget what you've been taught, but you never forget your teachers.
That is so true. We're talking about that today over lunch, weren't we? How you can remember all your favourite teachers. Well, all teachers, to be honest.
We were. We're talking about how it makes you feel, doesn't it? How does that teacher make you feel when you're in that class? What magic did they do, and how did they believe in you?
Yeah, and that's what imprints on you as an adult. Do you know what I mean? It reverberates into the rest of your life. Okay, so why did you pick early years? So you wanted to be a teacher. Well, someone told you to become a teacher because they saw something in you. You thought, let's go for it. You've started out, and there's so many different types of teachers out there, secondary, primary. What made you go down the route you did?
That's another good question that's really difficult to answer. The reason I became an early years teacher was my friend Helen was a junior school teacher. And I thought, oh, I'm not like Helen. I don't think I could be a junior school teacher. I think I'll go and be an infant teacher instead. So I literally really fell into teaching, and it was just the people around me that fortunately guided me in that direction. So probably a completely different answer from anybody else you'll meet.
Yeah. You just looked at the type of person that was a junior teacher and thought, that's not me.
That was it. I think, and there's something about young children, it's the awe and wonder that they create. I had done a lot of babysitting, to be fair, and really enjoyed babysitting young children. But that was really the end of my experience.
Yeah. Oh, why would you say, if you would say, early years is the best?
Oh, early years.
No biased.
A very biased response. Early years is the best part of the school. The children, it's their awe and wonder and the love that they create. And it's just such a magical opportunity to be there with them day in and day out. You have fun, but it's more than fun. You have to teach them, and each child's so different. You have to look at each child and think, what's making this child tick? Where do they need to go next with their learning? What do they really need? How can I help them? And it's just the most exciting part of the school, and no 2 minutes are the same. And there's always something that will happen every day that just makes you laugh and smile. They're inspirational.
Yeah, they are they're fun and they're funny at the same time. So what do you say to people, and there's very few people out there that would say this, no doubt, but just as a bit of a joke, that all you do in early years is just play. Do you know what I mean? So what would your response be to that? I've heard that I said a few times, but I know kind of what I reckon what your response will be. But what's your response to that?
I would just laugh and say, yes, we spend the day washing the stickle bricks, and it's a very skilled role. Joking apart, it just shows their lack of understanding. And I'd say, come into an early years classroom. The first head teacher I worked for, you say that we were the most organised members of the whole staff because we had to be, otherwise it was chaos. And if you think it's just play, that's because we're doing our jobs very well and we make it look very simple. But it's so complex. We'd need months and months to unpick it and explain exactly what's happening. And it's something that you can't learn straight away. You have to eat it, breathe it, sleep it, and it does take over your whole life. And you do constantly talk about it because it's so magical and so exciting.
Oh, that's great. What was your first year like? Because obviously now I'm really interested in hearing what it was like when you first started, when you first got your class, when you first started, you had your TAs and stuff like that. What was it like?
Well, you might know me. Mine was a slightly different experience from everybody else. So I'd been travelling for 4 months. I'd been to Australia and Southeast Asia, came back and got a job with Birmingham Authority starting in January as a teacher in nursery. There were 2 teachers and 3 TAs, which sounds great. Apart from the fact at the end of the first week, the lead teacher in nursery went on her maternity leave. The The second teacher came and she only survived about 4 weeks before she left. And then a new supply teacher came. So as an NQT, I was in fact in charge of nursery, but I had the 3 most amazing teaching assistants. Dot, the eldest, was like my mum to me, and they really looked after me and they trained me to be a teacher, and they'd let me try out things that didn't work and try again. And the best piece of advice they gave me is sometimes you've got an idea in your head, you plan it all out, you start doing it, it doesn't work, it's not right for the children, so just put it in the bin and start again. And they just really taught me that compassion and that love for the children, and to have fun and enjoy it and be part of a team and work together as a team and really take care of each other. And that if you took care of each other, then you take care of the children.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean, it seems like you were really lucky to have a team that gelled so well and looked after each other like that.
I was really lucky because they taught me a lot. And then after that, I went to reception, and our brief there with my colleague, Sarah, who's now one of my best friends, we were told to sort out reception and bring it up to date. So in the summer holidays, we both went in with big black bin liners, cleared out the classrooms, bought red boxes at the time from Sainsbury's, labelled everything with photos so the children knew where the resources went, photos on the resources so they could easily access them, and created these awe and wonder environments. And we worked really, really closely together. And she taught me a lot about early years education. And we still have the most amazing in-depth conversations about early years, even today. And her husband and my husband now just roll their eyes and go, here they go again. And they've given up trying to get us to change the subject.
So you do what all teachers do. My partner's a teacher. You all get together, no doubt sometimes agree not to talk about teaching. And then within a few minutes, you're talking about teaching and nothing but teaching in one way or the other. And normally it's really positive conversations, to be honest. Yes, there's a bit of moaning, like we all moan about our jobs. But would you say that most teachers, they go into it because they're passionate about what they do? It's not like a lot of jobs where you can just do it for a job, is it? You have to love it, don't you, to become a teacher, would you say?
You have to absolutely love it, and it has to become so important to you, and you have to be really passionate about it, and you just have to give those children the skills and knowledge that they need for life. And yes, things change over time, but then things remain the same, and it's about doing what's right for the children and doing the best that you can. And naturally you want to talk about it because it's just such a passionate thing to do, and it's a real honour and real privilege, and it makes such difference to people's lives, and it's about leaving the world in a better place than when you arrived, and being kind and being nice to people and making sure that you do the best job you can for them.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to fire a couple of questions at you in one go, just because I think they kind of mold into one a little bit. Is what was the best advice you were given, if you can remember any, or might be a couple. Sounds like you've worked with some inspirational people, from a head or a TA or someone that really struck a tone and stuck with you and you shared a lot with other people. And then the other one would be, what would you say to people that are thinking about a career as a teacher?
Not so much advice. I did work with somebody called Mary, who was really my Yoda, and she nurtured me and grew me into being a head teacher. And at one point when I was looking to go into the advisory service, she said, don't, you'll actually make a better head teacher, stay and be a head teacher. And she gave me lots of advice and lots of support. But really 2 sayings that stay in my mind are from my deputy head. And one of those was, would you like to be a child in this class? And then we had our school motto, which we couldn't really think of, but we had an advisor that came to do some work with us. And she wrote on the board, reach for the stars. And then that song became our school song as well in assembly, and all the staff used to join in.
Oh, that's so nice. And so before we jump into other things, you've worn many hats, and you wear many hats now too, to be fair. So you've worked in the UK, you are an EYFS specialist as well. You've been a head teacher, but you've also travelled. So do you want to, I guess, talk to the audience about travelling and the places you've worked and stuff, maybe, the differences?
First of all, I worked in the UAE, and I worked in a place called Al Ain, which is on the Omani border. And that was in 2010. And there I was on a project working to start with secondary school principals local Emirati principals, and I went to school and worked with them and taught them about school improvement planning, how to do school self-evaluation review, how to do lesson observations, and then performance management. And that was just a real privilege and a real honour. And I think the most important thing to learn from that was it was all about relationships. So you'd go into school, you'd sit down, you'd have a talk about your family, their family, how were they, what happened. You'd have some coffee and some dates, and then you'd do your business. And then you'd always make sure that even if you'd had a difficult conversation, you always parted as friends. And really, that was just a reminder that when you meet somebody, before you get down to business, always have time to check in with them, have a personal conversation with them, and learn about them as well. It's all about relationships. Even in a leadership role, the relationships are the most important thing. And after that, I went to China. And again, that's very, very strong in relationships and teamwork and working together and learning about each other and taking care. And then I went back to the UAE, and I also went out to Qatar and set up a school for GEMS education. And again, that was all about relationships with the parents and with the children. And what the parents wanted was a school where their child would be happy and well cared for and would do well academically. But the most important thing for them was, will my child be happy in the school, and how are you going to welcome me in and look after me as a parent? So I think the key thing is that we are all the same, and that relationships are key to everything you do. And working internationally, I work with a diverse range of teachers and admin staff from across the world, and it was all about treating people with respect and kindness and finding out about their culture and where they came from in their lives. And it was just the most amazing experience possible. So I'd say that if you do ever have the opportunity to travel, make the most of it. It's so worthwhile, and you do change and grow as an individual.
To be honest, a lot of people, I mean, it is popular these days, I think, to travel and stuff, but it's just nice to share with people that you can go to different countries with a role like teaching as well. Do you know what I mean? You don't just have to stay in the same village forever. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In the same note, how do you think, it's probably a big question to throw at you, but has teaching changed a lot since, was it the 90s you started teaching, is that right, or earlier? Or
It was 1992 I first started teaching. I was thinking about this earlier. It's evolved, but it's that saying, isn't it? Everything changes, but everything stays the same. And we're still chasing the same things: happy children and standards and results. And I think sometimes we worry too much about change. And what we need to do is stop, listen, and think, look at our schools and ask the question, it would be even better if. And we need to grow what we've already got in place. We need to nurture it and develop it. Take time out, talk to our children, talk to our staff, talk to our parents. They often know what needs to be done next, and make it small, manageable steps. I've always said as a head that whatever I put into place in a school, I want it to be there when I'm not there. So if I do something and I'm not there the next day, I don't want it to be happening when I'm walking down the corridor and you can hear my footprints. I want it to be happening when I'm not there, because the teachers really believe that will add to the learning experience for the children and make the school and the world a better place. And I think that's really important, just to stop and reflect. You're not there to self-promote. You're not there to bring in your own ideas. You're there to improve the school and make it better for those teachers so they can make the education even better for those children.
Wow. I love these conversations because it just warms me inside listening to teachers that are passionate and head teachers and stuff. It just, listening to someone talk about, yes, I'm the top of the school, I'm the leader, I'm the boss, I'm the manager, whatever you want to give it as well as head teacher, but you're a facilitator. Not this is my way or the highway, which is great to hear. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I always would have pictured a head teacher. Walks around, why aren't you doing it my way?
But I think you're right. You are a facilitator, and you're there to create leaders within your team, and you're there to give the team a voice. So the decision that you make is the right decision for the school. And you have to understand as a leader that people might not always say it in the way that you want them to say it, but quite often they will be right with what they're saying. And as a leader, you need to listen very carefully and reflect on what they're saying to you and what they're telling you. And then that will enable you to do the right thing for the school and the school community, and also give you a rationale and a reason for the decisions that you make.
Yeah. Okay. And then my next question would be, I've been thinking about this while you were talking with leadership and stuff. Quite often I find myself talking to people in senior leader positions and talking about being a class teacher or a head teacher. But how do you know if you're ready to take that next step up, even if big roles regardless, but you've mentioned EYFS lead, a key stage 2 lead, or then to an assistant deputy or to a head teacher. What would give this person, there's a lot of people out there that are thinking about senior leadership. What advice would you give to let them know they're ready, or advice to be ready? Or
learn your trade first. Make sure you do a few years in the classroom. Be hungry, but not too hungry. But also understand that when you start that new role, it's okay to be working outside your comfort zone, but make sure you have a mentor in place to support you. Listen to advice, seek advice and guidance. It's not weak to ask the questions. It's very strong. Ask the questions, listen to what people tell you, analyze it and make an informed decision. But why not? But take your time. Some promotions might come really quickly. Some you might have to wait for, but make sure that you are a very good, outstanding classroom teacher before you move on. You need to know what it's like to be in the classroom, and never forget your roots and where you came from. Always put yourself back into those shoes of the teacher. And remember that the most important person in your school, apart from your teachers and your children, are also your cleaners and caretakers, because without them, your school won't be able to function. And treat people how you want to be treated. Treat them with respect, kindness and love, and you won't go far wrong.
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, I've never been a head teacher, never will be, but I think someone listening to that will really strike a tone. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like rein it in a little bit and be a bit more humble, I guess, and stuff. But I guess, okay, so let's say you're thinking about being a head teacher. Now, there's a massive shortage of people at senior leadership level because many different reasons. But then there's another big shortage of people becoming head teachers. Now, if we can have, I guess, more of an open conversation about head teachers. So if we can talk about you, tell me what made you feel ready to be a head teacher. What was your first headship like? What did it feel like when you first have your own, I guess, you first walk in and you've made it, but also, the reality of all the different hats you need to wear to do that job. How different was it to what you expected, and what did you love about it, I guess?
I'd always wanted to be a head teacher from when I started teaching, and I set myself the target quietly of wanting to be a head teacher before I was 40.
Wow.
And at 37, I did become a head teacher. I think I was lucky from the point of view that I'd married somebody older than me, and he'd got teenage children, so I'd grown up quite quickly and had those life skills and life experiences beyond my years, and I think that held me in good stead. I was also very lucky that my first headship was a very good school, very experienced staff. The staff were a lot older than me. And what I did first of all was I met with them all individually to find out about them, what they were like, what they're interested in. And I'd learnt that from my MPQH. I also learnt as well to go in beforehand. And I went in, I think, on the 2nd of January, because I started in January. And I went through the filing cabinet and everybody's letter of application or teacher letter application, so I could find out more about them and what they were like, so that when I met them fully, I had a bit of background information from them, as well as what the previous head teacher said. And then I was just so excited to be there, but I knew that I had to be at the top of my game because they're a very experienced team. I had a great deputy who was so supportive, a very strong governing body. And I really listened and learned from everybody. I was lucky to be in Solihull, so I had a school improvement partner. He was really kind and supportive, and he found me another head teacher as a mentor, and she helped me and looked after me during my first year of headship. So I had a lot of support around me, but I was confident enough to accept that support and use that support. And I think that's what made the difference. At the end of my first week of headship, 2 of my staff had a massive argument because one of them had accidentally hit the other's car in the car park and hadn't sorted out the insurance. So I had that to deal with. And then half an hour later, we had a phone call from Ofsted to say that Ofsted would be coming soon. So that was quite challenging. And then we also had a parent who died tragically within my first term of headship, and having to deal with those sort of situations are all part of headship, but it was tough. It's hard work. It's long days. It's long hours. And you have to give your heart and soul to it. But also, I think, make sure that in your holidays, you look after your well-being and you have downtime then. But it's like everything, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And it was just such a lovely place to work for the most amazing teachers, wonderful children and wonderful parents. It was just great fun. And I think being a head is fun, and you have to have times where you can just sit and laugh about what's going on. And you need to have people on the staff that you can just laugh with and enjoy their company. Sorry, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was a bit mesmerised listening to you talk about being a head teacher in such a nice way.